Hey everyone, this is Tom Salemi of DeviceTalks. Welcome back to the DeviceTalks weekly podcast. Excellent show coming your way. We'll be talking with Kate Stephenson of Dyad Engineering and Shelia Shah of LEK Consulting. Both are co-chairs, or they're co-chairs of the MedtechVISION conference, which is coming up on September 10th. So we'll talk with them about their work on the conference and about some of the conversations you can look forward to. If you attend, look forward to meeting me and meeting Kayleen Brown. We'll both be there as well. So go to MedtechWOMEN.org to register for that. There's still, I understand at this point, as I'm recording, some seats available. So don't miss out on that. And then a little later, I'll talk with Rebecca Whitney. She's CEO of HighRidge Medical, and Eric Major. He's executive chairman of the board of HighRidge Medical. Both bring a lot of experience in the spine industry to this new venture, which is a new name and then some of the spine company that was spun out of Zimmer Biomet. So HighRidge is looking to make a name for itself in the spine space. We'll talk about where spine has been and where it's going and where HighRidge fits into all of that. So enjoy that conversation with those two leaders. Before we begin the podcast, no Device Talks Tuesdays this coming week, the day after Labor Day, but we are lining up our Connected Health series, which starts on September 10th. Fortunately, you can watch those live or on demand whenever it's convenient for you. We'll have leaders from Adana Medical, Canary Medical, Baxter, and BD, and they will be making their separate or individual presentations. You can register for the series. You can attend them all. Again, you can watch them live. You can watch them on demand, and it's all free. And you can ask questions too. Kayleen Brown and I will be moderating those sessions. So make sure you go to DeviceTalks.com to register for that. And while you're there, or if you want to go to west.devicetalks.com, you can register for the Device Talks West event, which is happening on October 16th and 17th at the Santa Clara Convention Center. We will have conversations and presentations by many large OEMs, Abbott, Baxter. We'll have Boston Scientific, Medtronic, and more Stryker keynote from Andy Pierce of Stryker. So we'll have keynotes from Baxter and Penumbra as well. So it's going to be a great couple of days, great opportunity to expand your network, and we really look forward to seeing you there again. Go to west.devicetalks.com, and if you want to save 25%, use the code DTPOD25 to save 25% off the cost of registration. So that's a couple of $100. Put that back in your pocket. All right. Without any further delay, let us get this podcast started. All right. You ready for this?
Ready.
Kayleen Brown, it's that time of year again. We're coming upon the MedtechVISION conference just in a couple of weeks. Are you excited?
Oh, I'm so excited. I've been counting down since last year.
It was a fantastic event last year. I'm sure it'll be doubly great this year. We're going to hear all the details from our two guests. We've got our co-chairs, Kate Stephenson. She's president and co-founder of Dyad, and Shelia Shah, managing director of LEK Consulting. Welcome you both to the podcast.
Right, glad to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Excellent. So we're, as we indicated just a moment ago, excited about the MedtechVISION conference coming up, and we wanted to get some highlights. First of all, have you put together programs or conferences before? I've done a couple, and they're just such a joy to string together. What was the experience like for you both putting this together?
So I've been doing the conferences for about a decade or so now. Usually I'm just doing the panels. Usually I'm a keynote or I'm doing some chairing. So I'm used to doing a little bit of wrangling the day of, but this has probably been the first major conference where it's been the whole 9-month journey. The last 2 years, I was one of the panel organizers. This year I got asked to step in and to actually take over chairing. Just because our previous chairs had done a three-year marathon running the show. And it was time to start upskilling and training up some additional volunteers. And so Shelia and I were asked to jump in. And so, but the amazing thing is MedtechVISION is put on by a large number of very talented women. It may not surprise you, but our organization has an amazing number of highly organized, very competent women in it. So you ask them to put an event together, and it comes together.
Who knew?
Just like that. Sheila, how was the time for you? Did you enjoy yourself?
Very much so, and I'm still very much enjoying myself. But as Kate mentioned, very well said, Kate. It's Kate and I are perhaps, the co-chairs of the conference, but nothing would get done without the huge team that's handling all of the panels, all of the keynotes, the logistics, the online virtual options. It's really amazing, just the group of women that we get to work with on this conference. This is the first time I've ever chaired an entire conference, and it's really been, honestly, just a honor to be able to be part of it.
That's great. And I think you're at the point of kind of like at the top of the water slide where you're just pushing yourself off and you're about to head down and there's nothing you can do to stop what's coming. So it's kind of an exciting time for being a conference organizer because all the pieces are in place and what's going to happen is largely going to happen except for the details. So enjoy that moment.
So as Tom and I mentioned, we had the joy of attending last year's event. Can you help remind me how long has MedtechVISION been going on?
Well, I knew I attended my first one in 2014, and that may have been the second or third. So it's at least a decade, and it depends if you count COVID or not. We had to do it fully remote that year. And so we're definitely somewhere between our 12th and 14th event. And definitely Lynette has been on for, I think, the last 4 or 5. She's our only full-time employee with the entire organization. And so she does a lot of the detailed planning. We have been at the same event every locale every year. So that is the Rosewood on Sandhill Road. So it is an amazing venue, amazing food, but it's also very small, which is part of what's really driven the conference to be small, but very excellent. You see some amazing people show up. We'd love to make it larger, but I'm not sure how we would do that and still have the same type of experience that you get coming to this conference.
I have to piggyback on what you're saying, Kate. So last year it felt so intimate because of this space that I felt I walked away with an entirely new Rolodex of contacts and incredible female leaders who I'm still in contact with today. So I could see how the Rosewood helps cultivate that sort of intimacy and networking capability. It's a beautiful venue, and congratulations on more than a decade. One of the other questions that can come to mind besides, how long that you've been moving forward with MedtechVISION is each year really identifying what that theme is. And that seems like such a challenge. So can you walk us through this year's theme and what it took to come to the conclusion?
Yeah, I'm happy to at least kick off the discussion. And then, of course, Kate would love to hear your thoughts as well. I think, as we started thinking through the conference theme, gosh, it feels like ages ago, but at least earlier this year, we started to talk about a lot of things. We talked about all of the innovation that's happening in medtech. We talked a lot about kind of women's health. We talked a lot about things like artificial intelligence. And really, there's just so much happening in the medtech landscape that there was no dearth of potential topics that we thought were important to highlight. But I think one of the consistent themes that kept coming through all of the different topics that we started to sort of ideate around was that nothing happens alone, and that all of the themes that we've been discussing are all around how does medtech need to kind of reach across the chasm and work with other healthcare and non-healthcare partners to really push forward some of these agendas. And so we realized that there was this kind of consistent thread that really connected a lot of these ideas and topics together. And so that's really where the idea of kind of partnering and working together in medtech came from. And we thought, we had this opportunity to really help drive a conversation about partnerships and how we can kind of create the medtech of the future. And so that's really where a lot of the kind of thought and the idea behind the theme came from. And as you know from the conference agenda, there's many different types of partnerships we wanted to showcase. There's sort of government medtech partnerships and everything the government can do to help push forward medtech agenda. Then there's kind of startups and big med techs, and how do we think about learning from each other to really push forward the innovation? And then there's this whole concept of kind of home care as well as non-hospital care. And how does MedTech partner with different kind of players across the ecosystem to really make sure that patients are being treated where they want to be treated? And so that really resonated with us. And I'm really excited to help kind of push forward this conversation about really ensuring that we don't have an industry that kind of only learns from each other, but learns and works with everyone else as well.
Oh, it's a great lesson. And I think one of the things that helped MedtechVISION stand out for me was your opening with the patient keynote. And last year you had Hafiza Muhammad, who just delivered a very moving and powerful testimony about her experiences with her son. Difficult act to follow. You're bringing in the patient perspective as well with a unique twist. Kate, can you talk a bit about that keynote address? Because I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, so the patient keynote has actually been there since the very beginning of MedtechVISION. It was something that the executive team from the very start wanted to make sure to set the right tone, set the right kind of ideas, instead of having kind of a big name in the industry, kicking things off, really going back to why are we all here? Before we get into the strategies and the finances and the reimbursement and all the different potential things, let's stop and go, okay, this is a real person with a real problem that theoretically we have all committed to try and help. And let's get reminded about that and realizing that we have had a very diverse group of very different individuals come up and share about their experiences. And every experience is different. Everyone, they all are united in the fact that they have had some kind of a crisis associated with their health, or a crisis of someone they deeply care about, and that they are now using this platform to be able to educate individuals about it. And I'm glad, just from the opportunity of giving not only these patient keynotes, they give us this incredible insight, this incredible just setting the tone for the conference, but it also gives them access to some amazing executives and leaders. And I'm very proud to say that we've had some amazing connections with a number of the patient keynoters, with high-ranking individuals within the industry, because they've been able to build this very deep emotional connection, which in turn has moved on into a lot of strategic initiatives, a lot of ways of mutually supporting each other. So very excited with Brooke's story. It's absolutely amazing because she's coming in with both sides. She's a triple threat. She's coming in with her health journey. She's coming in from a very high-powered executive perspective of being in this industry for so long, and caretaker. I can't tell you more about her story than that, but it's not just her health intensity. It's the health challenges of her loved ones that she's also had to deal with. And the fact that she gets to come in and share about all three of those perspectives at once. Very excited to have her.
You're absolutely right, Kate. I really felt that the patient keynote was almost the grounding for everybody in the audience. It was a deep reminder of why we're all here. And I'm using your own words back at you because I agree with them so completely. And I remember I was sitting around in the middle of the room, and I was a year postpartum myself, and just tears rolling down my face. And for those who know me, I do not cry. And I looked around and there was not a dry eye in the room. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm crying in this moment because it's been 12 months since I had my own experience, which was a lot of parallels. Why is everybody else crying? And Tom was in the front row, and he turned and he caught my eye and he mouthed to me, "Are you okay?" Because he knew how similar those two stories were. And he has tears down his face. And I felt that was an emotional connection that we all needed, so that when we listened to the panel discussions that followed, we were able to do it in a very active way. How can we take these lessons learned today and tomorrow? Who do we need to bring with us? And it was a very powerful experience that has continued on. So I'm personally looking forward to Brooke's story's story, but I'm also intrigued to learn more about the two panel discussions that you pulled together, one being bridging the innovation gap and the other meeting long-term society needs at scale. So Shelia, do you mind maybe walking us through one of those panels, how they came together and what you're hoping to accomplish?
Yeah, of course. The only thing, though, I would love to just quickly highlight, there's actually 3 panels.
Great.
So there's Yeah, so you get more than you even wanted.
Yes!
But
And yet there's more.
So the first panel is called Meeting Long-Term Society Needs at Scale, which is about medtech and government partnerships. The second panel is called Bridging the Innovation Gap, which is about medtech startups as well as medtech giants and really how you can collaborate for success. And then the third panel is about meeting patients where they are. So this is really what is medtech's role in kind of furthering non-acute care and hospital at home. And so each of those panels will take a slightly different, of course, approach and conversation. And of course, the panelists and the moderators have been sort of hand selected, and we're so lucky to have them all because they are kind of titans in each of their areas of expertise. So really the MedTech government panel will talk a lot about really what are some of the regulations or initiatives and innovations that the government and the MedTech can kind of ideate on together to help push forward innovation from a MedTech perspective, and how can we really support MedTech innovation and kind of growth. And then the panel around the MedTech startups and the giants. Obviously, as you know, there's been so much kind of interesting activity about some pretty meaningful acquisitions this year from some of these medtech giants. And I think one of the things that's been interesting to see is just how much the large medtechs are learning from some of these startups. And so really what we're driving forward there is really a conversation about what can we all learn from each other? How do the giants learn how to be more nimble, how to be, really, I keep using the word innovative, and I feel like I'm repeating myself a little bit, but really more innovative. And then what can the startups learn around perhaps, providing the level of discipline that the med techs have. And so I think that will also be a really fascinating conversation. And then the last one about kind of non-acute care and hospital and kind of care at home, that's all around how do med techs make sure that we can support patients? How do we make sure that they are providing the tools and the services and the solutions that patients want to be treated outside of the hospital? And so as you can tell from each of the panels, it's really around how can med techs, as I mentioned earlier, kind of reach across the kind of divide. I don't use the word divide because it's not truly a divide, but reach across and make sure that we're partnering with others to really ensure kind of a better ecosystem for all.
Well, those sound like three extremely important and fascinating panels. I'm looking forward to seeing those. Kate, I know there's a lot more on the agenda. What else should people know about?
Well, we have our patient keynote, we have our panels. Of course, we have our amazing networking breaks as well. I want to encourage everyone out. Don't miss our wine happy hour at the end of the day. It's awesome. But I do not want to forget to mention Dr. Michelle Tarver is our keynote this year. She is the interim director of the CDRH. We did not know that when we got her. We are incredibly grateful that she's still coming.
I was wondering.
And it just highlights this happens a lot. Actually, we occasionally get women coming in to be on our panels, and they undergo major title changes in the 9 months, and it's just a representation of the kind of individuals we have come into this event. I don't want to say all of them are like Dr. Tarver. She's probably a bit of an outlier, but we are excited to have her. The event is Tuesday, September 10th. It's going to be in Menlo Park. It's at the Rosewood Sand Hill. We have a few registration openings still available, probably going in the last week here, but we would still love to have, pack the room out and definitely come on down.
That's fantastic. No, and so you're suggesting that if someone accepts a speaker role at MedtechVISION, they're putting themselves in line for a very, very big promotion, right?
Hey, it's correlation, not causation. Okay, we got to bring that up there.
Shelia, final question. I mean, what should folks know about MedtechWOMEN? I mean, it's a great organization. We talk a lot about it, but any details you can share? And for those who aren't involved, tell them why they should be.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. So I think, I'm trying to figure out how to say this without sounding too cliche, but my first MedtechVISION conference was back in 2021, I want to say. Or 2022, I'm forgetting exactly, but one of those years was my first MedtechVISION conference, and it was 2021. There we go. And I left that conference feeling like I made a bunch of friends. And I am a huge introvert, and so that is not something that comes easily to me. And I left that conference honestly feeling just excited to be part of the medtech industry. And I really have been so, as I mentioned earlier, just so honored to be able to be a bigger part of the planning this year so that I can help other women feel that way when they lead that conference. But the conference is really only a part of the organization. Lynette and team, there's a broad number of volunteers outside of Kate and I who are coordinating a ton of different events throughout the year. And one of my personal visions for the organization is that it just becomes bigger and bigger every year. It'd be great for the conference to be bigger and bigger, as Kate mentioned, but honestly, it's really more about the network outside of the conference that has really been a big part of the reason why I continue to be part of the organization. And so my kind of suggestion or request from others that are thinking about going to the conference or on the fence on it is that as a huge introvert, I actually enjoyed myself at a networking event. And I really want to say, I know you don't, for those that don't know me, I know you don't know if you can trust me or not, but I promise you that it was one of the most really rewarding days of my kind of professional experiences, and would really highly recommend either coming to the conference if you can, joining virtually, or just joining the organization and coming to some of the events, both virtual and in person if you can.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Shelia. And I, once again, have to echo your sentiments. I walked away with a lot of friends myself, and I'm so keen to see how I can continue being part of the organization and move forward together. Kate, can you help us, for those who want to be involved, how do you become a member of MedtechWOMEN?
Okay, well, MedtechWOMEN actually underwent a major change about 3 or 4 years ago now, as we actually became a 501(c) nonprofit. We actually originally were just the event. We were just MedtechVISION. The group name was just the name that we had. And so what happened is we realized women wanted more. One year was not, one event a year was not enough. And there was a lot of other needs that we needed to be met. And so we became a professional group. You can now go to MedtechWOMEN.com. And you can actually register to be part of the organization. And that allows you to participate in a number of our programming. So we are doing multiple in-person and virtual events throughout the year. We also have things like a board readiness group where we have a number of our very senior members who have been in the industry for 20 years and are looking at what's next. How do we change those numbers around women executives in medtech, women on board positions? There's also a great peer mentoring group that I've been able to be part of this summer, where we're pairing up young early career women with more mature women. So I've been chatting with an amazing woman who's about me 15 years ago about how to navigate leaving her first startup, or, how do I manage emotional relationships and car buying and my stocks and stuff that I would have loved to have had 15 years ago. And so there are all these different subgroups. And so if you have something you're passionate about and it aligns with our mission about really getting amazing women who are not usually represented in the medtech industry on a stage and giving them a platform, reach out to us. You can reach out to Lynette. She's our executive director, or just send an email or connection in through the MedtechWOMEN webpage. And we will hook you up with a group that may potentially support your volunteering interests.
Shelia, Kate, I'm so excited to see you both in person September 10th in Menlo Park. Thank you very much for joining us. I'll kick it back over to our host, Tom Salemi.
That's great. And I'm definitely looking to an introverts only conference, Shelia, because I'm with you. I'm an introvert. And I think that would be a fantastic time to be in a room full of introverts. So we'll take a look at that, of course, after DeviceTalks West, which is coming a month after your great conference. So busy time for MedTech folks. Make sure you start off right on September 10th with MedtechVISION. And thank you both for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you.
Great to be here. Always happy to hear the podcast. I've been a fan of it for a couple of years, so very excited to be on it myself.
Woo! Thanks for listening.
This is Tom Salemi of DeviceTalks. We're excited to bring you another great program for DeviceTalks West here at the Santa Clara Convention Center, talking new business models, new missions, and new intentions. I can't wait until we fill this auditorium with MedTech's best engineers, entrepreneurs, and executives. This is DeviceTalks West.
The foundation of connected care is the who we are that drives the what we do. We shape our environment, and then our environment shapes us.
Thoughtful discussions of how it impacts not only markets, but society and the workforce.
what is it doing for the patient? And that's what our technology needs to be.
I look at what the standard of care is today. Are there areas where we can improve upon the standard of care, or are there areas where there are significant gaps? And that's what drives me.
What am I trying to accomplish? Getting back to that core, what problem am I trying to solve? Am I going to do something new and really move the needle for patient outcomes? So there's a ton of work to be done, and that's what keeps me excited.
Why did you choose MedTech? Find out at DeviceTalks West on October 16th and 17th. Register at west.devicetalks.com.
The folks that are saving lives, they're all here.
Well, Eric Major and Rebecca Whitney, welcome to the podcast.
We're excited to be here.
Thank you for having us, Tom.
Well, I can't wait to get into the HighRidge story, but we always like to start these podcasts finding out a little bit about our guest careers. Rebecca, you've been on the podcast before, and I'll link to the podcast episode so folks can get your complete story. Eric, let's just focus on you for a moment. What drew you to the medtech industry? And looking at your background, you seem to have a proclivity for starting and leading companies. I kind of want to understand sort of what drove you to that path and to that path relatively early in your career.
Sure. Well, Tom, again, I'm really excited to be here. I'm excited about what Rebecca's building at HighRidge and supporting her and the broader organization. I've been in spine for 30 years and either ortho, neuro. It's been a long run. I started off in pharma for a short period of time. And when I was in pharma, I had an anesthesia product, had an opportunity to be in the operating room and see these reps selling products for hip and knee replacement and learn more about how that worked and the engagement in the OR and got really excited about it. So I ended up going to work for an agent and carried the bag for quite a while, had the DC area, and my agent had asked me to carry a little spine company called Acromed. And that got me into medtech. I had always had a predisposition towards being an entrepreneur. And a surgeon had an idea around vertebral body compression fractures. We were pioneers in the space. Kaifun was on the West Coast. We had no idea we were on the East Coast.
Oh, really?
And he and I came together and we came up with this concept and built a company called American Osteomedics. That predisposition of being an entrepreneur was a lot of fun learning as I went. I called it a poor man's MBA. How do you raise capital? How do you launch a product? All that stuff.
What I wanted to I didn't realize the connection with or the fact you were operating in a similar field as Kaifun and kyphoplasty. I mean, talk a moment. Give us a look back to that time, because that was really I don't want to use the term Wild West because that kind of sounds a negative, but there was so much going on in spine. There was so much excitement, so much exhilaration. What was it about the spine space at the time that was that really caught the area on fire, and what was it like sort of being part of that tidal wave?
So you're right. When I reflect back and I talk to different groups around entrepreneurship and so forth, I really say it was lightning in a bottle, right time, right place. So I started off in the OR and just loved that environment, right? I had never been exposed to the medical environment before, a short time with pharmaceutical, but being in that operating theater and being part of that and having a surgeon come up with this concept and say, hey, we could do this. And so, we had the surgeon I was working with had patients that had vertebral body compression fractures. And at the time, the only way to treat them was really bracing and bed rest and pain medication. And said, we could inject polymethylmethacrylate to try and reinforce the vertebral bodies. And it was shocking, the results. Patient came in a wheelchair, couldn't walk, and the pain was gone the next day. So I'll just quickly on that, I remember NAS 2000 walked out onto the floor and saw this big company, Kaifun, and had no idea they existed. And we had this little tiny 10 by 10 booth. So a lot of history on that story. We ended up getting acquired by Interport Cross, which was traded under the ticker BONZ at the time. We thought in those early days that the biologic that they were selling would be perfect for that space. And it was just a very interesting and exciting run. Ultimately, I think a lot of patients were positively impacted now by their ability to have pain resolution because of this technology area, the great things Kaifun did, other companies that have come along, and what we did. American Osteomedics, we were using the term osteoplasty with this idea of reinforcing the bone structure of the vertebral body.
That's great. And I want to revisit the K2M story just in a moment. But Rebecca, I mean, from your perspective, you've worked in a few different medical medtech markets. What is it about spine that drew you, and how is it different from other medical device markets?
Yeah, it's a timely question. I actually just hit my 10-year anniversary in the spine industry earlier this summer. So having been in spine for a decade now, it is definitely unique in a very good way compared to other sectors in medtech that I've worked in previously. I love it all. What I like about spine is it is by far the most complex space I've ever worked in, and that's what makes it fun. So I think the tight connection with our surgeon customers, that's the other major differentiator compared to the other areas where I've worked. That innovation only happens when you really partner up with surgeon customers to lock arms and move the industry forward. So it's been a wild ride. It's been an amazingly fun time. When I came into spine 10 years ago, I didn't know what I didn't know. And now having done this for a decade, it is definitely unique and nuanced and challenging, but that's also what makes it, I think, the most exciting space in the medtech space.
Yeah, you're right. No, the spine surgeons are intimately involved. It kind of reminds me of ophthalmology a little bit, where they're really get their sleeves rolled up and they're involved in the innovation and the companies to a degree. Eric, just swinging back, just tell, if you could, quickly the K2M story. It's quite a story. I remember talking to you early on. I did a magazine profile when K2M was just rolling out. You just had gotten your financing and you were starting to build out the portfolio. How did that come together? And how representative is that of opportunities in the spine space where you can sort of build a company like that and ultimately sell it to a company like Stryker, where I know you worked for a time after that leading the spine group. But just share the K2M story for a moment.
Sure. So I always like to remind people that K2M was really a collection of people that came together with an idea. We started K2M literally in the early days in my garage, but lots of people involved in those early days and bringing IP and concepts and vision of where we could go and how to fund the early days and so forth. So we started K2M in 2004. It was really a concept in 2003. And we formally started it in 2004 with this concept of focusing on surgeon-driven design. It was a pioneering thought process at the time. There weren't as many spine companies, right, like there are today. And this idea of really listening to the surgeon to get feedback in the development of those technologies. Dr. Kostwick, coming out of Johns Hopkins University, one of the leading minds in surgery, as well as many other surgeons and people involved with ideas and patents and so forth. So we started in 2004 with this concept of rapid innovation and development. We moved very, very quickly. And early on, got some momentum in 2004 and pivoted to this focus on the complex spine. We had we believe, some differentiated technology in that space. And then we recapped the company in 2010 with private equity, which fueled the capital necessary to continue to grow. And we took the company public in 2014. And as you had noted, we sold to Stryker right at the end of 2018, going into 19. I always like to say it's not a straight line. A lot of ups and downs along the way, a lot of lessons learned, a lot of history. But that's the quick story on K2. And we were, I think, we were driven by rapid innovation. We were launching 7 to 10 new products a year, really focused on trying to bring differentiation to the market. So it was a fun run. It was a great run.
That's great. I want to understand how you're going to be applying lessons from K2M to HighRidge, but first, let's introduce folks to HighRidge a bit. Rebecca, tell us about HighRidge Medical, its origins. We talked when you were with ZimV, so we can kind of delve into that a little bit. But what are the origins and what will be the focus going forward?
Yeah, so first thing first, we are a brand new company as of April 1st. We really are a compilation with a long, rich legacy history, but make no mistake, this is a completely different organization. So that's number one. What's been exciting is we are now the largest privately held spine company in the world. Pure play spine, top to bottom, side to side, that's all we do. So We're incredibly focused. And I think what's nice about that is when you think about the legacy organizations that have come together and then been spun out to create what is now HighRidge, we are getting back to our roots. And I think, Tom, you and I talked a couple of summers ago about how I came to the organization right after Biomet had acquired Langs. Langs was a pure play privately held spine company. LDR, of course, very similar.
Mm-hmm.
And so what's nice now is we have between the K2M roots, the length roots, and the LDR roots, we're kind of getting back to our essence when all of these companies, when you talk to team members or surgeons or our sales force, they say those were the best years of working for this organization. And so what we're doing with HighRidge is getting back to that essence and really just driving that mission forward. Surgeon-driven design, as Eric said, fast-paced, nimble, creating a great place to work for our team members and a great place for surgeon partners to work with us, not to mention our sales force, just really engaging all the different stakeholders to move this thing forward together. So we're very excited, very excited.
What are go over quickly your product portfolio? What areas will you be focusing on? Are you touching all areas with the spine or do you have a particular focus on one or two?
Yeah, we are. Mobi-C and Tether, of course, are our two flagship brands, and those are fantastic technologies. Those are not going anywhere. But we're going to take that presence and that market development expertise that we've honed and apply it to other verticals or deeper in the verticals, I should say. So let's talk Mobi-C, for example. We have a wonderful leadership position in motion preservation. We're going to build upon that to really build a robust portfolio to lead with that differentiated technology, but do a much better job pulling through the rest of the business. Complex spine, very similar. Tether gives us a seat at the table with thought-leading KOL surgeons around the world, but we're going to build that out in a much more robust and meaningful way so that we not just have a motion preservation solution, but really everything from soup to nuts that a complex spine surgeon customer is looking for. So essentially, we're going to take what we already have. We're going to put our innovation on turbocharge here and start developing and innovating at a much more rapid pace than what the market has seen coming out of us previously. So build upon everything that's good and solid, but put the rest of the organization into a much higher pace and a much higher sense of urgency, much more customer-driven, customer-focused organization. And that's how we're going to take HighRidge to the next level here.
Eric, let's talk a little bit about the surgeon relationship. I know I was going over HighRidge's website. I saw the mention that you're going to be redefining the kind of the surgeon industry relationship. It reminded me a bit of the story line that you had with K2M as well. And clearly, this, as I noted earlier, surgeons are an important part of spinal companies and the spinal industry. How has that relationship changed with surgeons between industry over the time? Because it has changed in other sectors. And I wonder if it's changed in spine or if it's still the same. And how does HighRidge redefine that relationship?
So I think it's a great question. And as I think about answering that, I'm going to reflect back to the early days of K2. Again, we tend to forget sometimes history. At the time, there weren't as many spine companies. There were a couple large companies. And there was a feeling, right or wrong, that the surgeons were not really involved in the product development, and it had pivoted to large company engineers only driving the technology development. And this was our perception, okay? Everyone has a different view of the world, but that's how we viewed it, and we went, and we felt like, look, at the end of the day, in spine specifically, in orthopedics, the surgeons have to be around the development table to get feedback because they're the one touching the patient every single day. We can be supportive, we can develop the technology, but the surgeon is Schumacher. The surgeon is Hamilton who drives that race car. We can develop the Ferrari, right? We can develop the Red Bull car, but we can be the pit crew that helps. But at the end of the day, the surgeon's driving the car. And I use that analogy because unlike pharma, where it's done on the bench and in those clinical trials, you've got to listen to the surgeon for feedback. And then that's gone through various perceptions over the years. And I have been very active in the rewriting of the AdvaMed Code of Ethics to say, how do you do this the right way? How do you engage the way you need to be able to get the feedback from the surgeons? So I believe that it continues to be critical that in a very compliant way that you continue to listen to surgeons to get their feedback to what they need in that operating room theater. And that leads to innovation and ideas by putting up the whiteboard and saying, kind of, what if, how do we handle this situation? One of the things I often tell young business students that are interested in the medtech space and medical technology innovations is often in that operating room when I talk to surgeons or medical students who also are interested in business school, say a lot of time the nurses and the doctors come up with processes to just go around whatever's in the OR with regard to efficiency to have better patient care. right? And they figure it out in that operating environment, and that stimulates innovation and things that can be created or designed. And so we need to be listening to those surgeons. So that's what that really means at the core. Mm-hmm. And then you build a culture, Tom, around that. You build a whole culture around the engineers, product managers, people in the field saying, what are we seeing in the OR? What feedback are the surgeons giving us? It's easy to say, it's hard to do, to drive that culture. And I think, when I watch what Rebecca's doing with the team she's building at HighRidge, you're immediately starting to see that and that sense of urgency. We talk about 24/7, 365. We have to be on because surgeons are on all the time for patient care. And that also means around rapid innovation, about taking in those ideas and 3D printing these ideas on a regular basis to say, okay, if we're going to keep innovating, some of these are going to pop out as being really groundbreaking, patient impactful technologies.
Rebecca, can you give us a little more detail on how you're working with surgeons? Are your engineers engaging with them? Are they meeting on neutral ground? What does this relationship look like? And how are you including surgeons in the R&D process?
Yeah, I think it is absolutely a differentiator for us. Our engineering talent that was really born out of Lynx, we've obviously augmented that considerably over the last 10 plus years, but they are surgeon focused and surgeon first. They are with our surgeons as often as our marketing team is. And so those relationships are very deep. And there's a constant back and forth when it comes to product innovation. So that's the number one way we're using them is the actual product development. But we use them in so many other ways. We partner with them across the board, whether it's clinical studies, research, thinking about how we position our products and our customers, helping them kind of bring surgeons into their institution to learn more about how they're operating and how they're moving some of these key procedures forward. It really is a partnership. I think the best example of that is the tether. We worked hand in hand with these surgeons to basically work with the FDA to bring a groundbreaking technology to market to treat these young kids. We launched the tether 5 years ago this month. We've treated almost 2,500 children around the world, and that would not have happened in this time frame without that very deep, close partnership. So I think the good news for us is we know how to do it, and we have done it. Now, with this next chapter, as I said earlier, we are turbocharging innovation, and so we are standing up multiple new design teams, all of which include thought-leading surgeons to help us in these various segments. And in parallel, we've got teams of engineers, product marketing, working hand in hand with these surgeon design teams to innovate in multiple segments all at the same time. So the last thing I would say on that point is here in Colorado, it's a wonderful headquarters. It's a great place to bring in surgeons. We have an 8-station cadaver lab. We have mechanical testing on site. And so it's a wonderful hub to create the spirit of innovation in partnership with our surgeons who come to visit us here. So our surgeons know us and they kind of know that we're known for this Colorado destination. So the relationships have really spanned beyond just product development. We truly are creating a culture and a HighRidge family that includes our surgeon customers, which has been really fun to see it start to come to life.
That's great. How has the market or the location where spinal surgeries are being done, how has that changed? Are we seeing the same sort of movement toward ASCs like we're seeing in other specialties? Perhaps it's even more advanced. There's certainly a lot of spine centers out there and such. Who are you selling to primarily? What does your customer base look like in terms of size of institution and sort of type of business?
Yeah, it really depends on the segment we play in.
Okay.
So I'll give you an example. MobiC, a very substantial percentage of our business has already migrated to the surgery center.
Okay.
Something like the tether and more of our complex spine products, obviously less so. And so we run the gamut. And what's nice about that is we're able to modify our go-to-market strategies and almost play with these various sites of care because we have product solutions already that suit the various options that are out there. Big picture, if I take a step back, absolutely, I think these spine procedures will move to the ASC. Not every procedure type and not every patient selection is critical. But as the industry and as we continue to develop more tools and more solutions that are catered to that ASC customer, I do believe that many of these procedures are a perfect fit for the ASC. And MobiC is a very, very good example of that. So the MobiC product is a perfect procedure, as well as the way the sets are designed. That's a critical consideration when looking at serving this side of care. So we are fortunate to have some of our leading technology that already suits that need very well. And in future years, absolutely anticipate that shift only continuing to accelerate.
Eric, can you add to that? I mean, you've been in the spine industry for a time, as we talked about earlier. How different is it now, and how does how will that environment for physicians in that market, how does that sort of change how you grow a company? If it's, I would imagine if there are fewer smaller players fewer kind of independent surgeons out there, it makes it harder to build new business, or maybe makes it easier. I guess that's why I'm asking you the question. How does this new environment contrast to when you were building K2M initially, and how does that play into your strategy for building out HighRidge Medical?
So obviously we watched the advent of the ASCs over the last, call it 20 years, and the momentum of the ASCs. Like so many things, I'd say, Tom, in medtech or medicine in general, they take a little bit longer than anticipated. Mm-hmm. And the ASC momentum we kept hearing was going to take a big chunk of the business, and we were going to see a migration of patients to ASCs. And I would say more recently, in the last 5 to 7 years, we really started to see that movement. The types of cases being done in an ASC versus a traditional hospital environment. It may seem obvious, but at the end of the day, we have to continue to develop best-in-class products, right? If we have best-in-class products, then surgeons are going to default to the HighRidge technology, whether that's in an ASC or in a hospital. But it does make us think about the cost structure of an ASC, streamlining what is available. I mean, this is very different from doing a pediatric case for complex spine with multiple trays and implants versus a single level cervical disc or a low back screw and rod case with interbodies. So it impacts how we think about product development, or maybe more importantly, instrument design and workflow. Mm-hmm. But the core implant that's going into the technology that's intended to help the surgeon take care of the patient, that still comes down to how do we create new technologies and new innovation. So that doesn't change. So, we've seen incremental change in spine. We've seen a couple gap up technologies that have changed the market. Mm-hmm. But, I'll give you an example. The two products, our tether probably continues to be used in that hospital-based environment for the most part. But our Mobi-C is used in both environments and easily used in the ASC environment as well. So I think we're positioned well with our technologies as we build on this portfolio to play in both spaces.
Mm-hmm. Rebecca, we're talking about the products, the actual implants, the things that go into the body. I wonder, how is HighRidge looking at things like AR, VR, digital surgery, sort of the tech components of what's beginning to move into more general surgery, certainly soft tissue surgery. We're certainly seeing some spinal robotics. How does all this additional technology play into HighRidge's strategy going forward? Are you going to be party to that? Will you have elements of that? Or do you just at this moment focus on the implants?
No, it's exactly the right question. We absolutely have to be a part of this. Mm-hmm. Enabling technology is the future of spine surgery. I firmly believe that. The implants, of course, will continue to drive innovation in their own right. But I've said for years, I think the real step forward for this industry is in the enabling tech category, basically everything beyond the implant. So we are in the early days of a partnership with Augmetics, which is augmented reality. And so far, it's only been a few months, we're getting incredibly positive feedback from our sales force and our surgeon customers. It's a unique way to leapfrog the more traditional navigation solutions. It's a true heads-up display, and the price point is a much more affordable level. So when we talk about things like the surgery center market, we're not pricing ourselves out of some of these sites of care. So I've said always that I think it's not just about having enabling tech, it's about bringing the right enabling tech to the right procedural solution. And I think Augmetics gives us that opportunity for several of our flagship brands and in some of the procedures we're interested in going next. So it will absolutely be a critical part of our strategy moving forward. And it's another area we've been very focused on since becoming HighRidge in April. So more to come there, but make no mistake that can and has to be a part of our strategy moving forward.
Yeah, I would add to that. I'd add to what Rebecca's saying there. So enabling tech has become a very important strategic component in spine, right? To support the surgeons that want to use imaging, navigation, robotics, other pathways, AR, VR, and decompressions, treating the spine, correction of the spine, and the implants that they use. So when I first got engaged with what became HighRidge, and we started looking at some of these technologies, I'll touch on 2 points. Number one, the first time I put the Augmetics headset on, I was frankly pleasantly surprised and very impressed with how seamless it was. I expected it to be a little more clunky. These technology, when you're a competitor and you're looking at different technologies from a different viewpoint. First time I did that lab, there was kind of a wow factor of how easy and seamless it was. And I think that sets us up, right, to bring best-in-class implants combined with an enabling tech strategy. There's a lot of spine companies out there. This strategy is really important. And part of why I got, as I listened to this conversation, part of why I got re-engaged in spine when I thought that I was retiring out of spine was one of the key pieces was the portfolio. I agreed to go out and do a tour out to Boulder and see the facility and the technologies and realized that the portfolio was quite impressive. There was more to come, but either what was already in design that hadn't been launched yet or the products that are actually in the market today were very impressive products. And things like Tether made us relevant in the complex spine space immediately. Why not be the leader in the space when you have a best-in-class product like Tether? Build out everything else around it because you're already at the table. With arthroplasty, why not build on that portfolio from the cervical portfolio because you've got a best-in-class product? And so I think we're doing some really exciting things there. And it's that portfolio of innovation that really got me excited. And the AR/VR component of it was a big piece because there had been so much work in imaging nav as it relates to big technology, right? Large capital that has to take up a footprint in the operating theater. And to move into something that could do that through this headset environment became very exciting.
That's great. Do you need to have a robot to compete in the future? I don't know how it is with spine. I mean, ortho, it's clearly becoming more and more important. I don't know. And we have a few spinal systems, but how do you view robotics as part of your future?
So, I think there's so much exciting technology. I'm pausing to think through this because there's so much exciting technology out in the market right now. Robotics has been out for a while, but it's still in the early innings, right? The existing technology on its ability to be a drill guide, a stable drill guide, is interesting and it works relatively well, right? When the technology is working and in the right hands. It takes time. There's no question it adds to workflow, but it adds, that precise drill guide environment for surgeons. I think something like AR/VR and where we're going to provide surgeons that ability to have a different engagement with the patient's anatomy during surgery for navigation, I think is critical. And that all comes back to workflow and time. So workflow and time is very, very important as we think through all this. But I do, and I would say to you, Tom, that I think robotics will continue to progress. And remember earlier on a different topic, I said medtech takes forever, like ASCs. We are going to be in an era at some point where it's much faster. It's much more seamless. We're not adding an extra 30 minutes plus 45 minutes to workflow. Maybe there is decompression or stripping of the muscle so that they can do, the robots are doing more. That is coming down the road with the advent of new AI and new technologies and new robotics capabilities. I think today you don't have to have a robot to compete head to head because of its really positioning as, a drill guide based platform. But in the future, I think it's going to be interesting to see where all this goes, the combination of all these technologies. Rebecca?
Yeah, I'll go back to what I said earlier. I do think that the most exciting place for innovation in spine is the enabling tech market, and that includes robotics. I think robotics has a long way to go to make it as scalable as it needs to be, but I absolutely think it's an exciting space and something we'll continue to watch. In the near term, I think some of these other solutions in the navigation and AR space are probably more relevant and more applicable, at least from what I hear from surgeons in terms of what they're looking for today. So I do think robotics will continue to evolve as future iterations become available, and I'm excited to continue to watch the space. Right now, I do believe that navigation and AR is probably where the majority of the market is looking when they're seeking an enabling tech solution.
The only other thing I would add to that as I listen to both of us kind of walk through this is that the operating theater has continued to get crowded. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of heavy metal in the OR. There's a lot of capital that hospitals are purchasing into this operating theater environment. And there's space limitations, there's cost limitations, there's service limitations and so forth. And it's something to be to think about, right? When you have a 10 OR environment and you have this large robotic solution in only one of those ORs, right? So I think there are some other solutions in the marketplace, some of what we're doing with AR, VR to really help solve that and move faster in theater. So do I think you have to have one or the other? No, I think they're symbiotic in an OR environment, depending on what kind of case you're doing, what type of workflow you're looking for.
Excellent. All right. Final question. I mean, this is a unique opportunity to be starting a company. I mean, Eric, you had done that with K2M. You started from scratch. Rebecca, you helped spin a company out of a larger company. This is a completely unique exercise in terms of taking pieces of older companies and forming them into an exciting new company. What are the steps you take when forming a company like this one? I know you just had your company kickoff meeting, I think, recently. Do you try to assume parts of previous cultures? Do you try to export an entirely new culture? What is the secrets to launching a company and to getting yourselves off on the right feet?
Yeah, so I think the nice thing here is we're not starting from scratch. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's been a balance, having lived through this organization for the last decade, of picking and choosing the pieces of the culture that we really enjoyed and that served us well, but then not being afraid to shed and leave behind the parts of our legacy that frankly held us back in many ways. So I find it really exciting. I love to build things and fix things. I get bored pretty rapidly in a steady state. So it's been a really fun exercise to have the headspace to actually generate and be very prescriptive about what it is we're building here. The nice thing is, though, we can tap back into those legacy lengths roots, those legacy LDR roots. And now, of course, with K2 DNA joining the team, there are a lot of similarities about the way we used to operate. And we all remember what those days felt like. So being able to tap back into that and reharness that energy has been really exciting. And it's been well received so far by everybody involved. So that's one. And then the second piece I would say is what are we going to be known for as an organization? What is our identity? And that surgeon-driven design and that close surgeon relationship is really how we will set ourselves apart. We've got the product strategy as well, but the overarching umbrella is we want this to be a destination company for the surgeons we work with, our sales force that sells our products, and our internal team members. And we're going to do that by being fast-paced, nimble, responsive, uber focused on the surgeon customer, and driving innovation forward every day. So we're trying to keep it really simple. We're also trying to harness and tap back into these parts and pieces of ourselves that have always been there. So it's been a blast. We've got some work ahead of us to take this to its full potential, but we are well on our way and could not be more excited.
That's great. Okay. Eric, anything to add to that? I mean, K2M had a distinct culture. You can see it from outside. Your products all were named after peaks, and I think you had a very, very strong imagery that was conveyed through your branding and I think through your culture. Does that work every time? How are you approaching working with HighRidge and helping them move forward?
Well, obviously, I love the name HighRidge.
That's all I needed. Name it HighRidge, and I'm in.
So, a lot of that symbolism is real. It is really hard to hike or mountaineer or climb. And people say, well, why do you do that? You can go online and take a picture. And the reason is because it's about embracing the journey, right? It's about embracing that journey and building the culture that you talked about. So, Rebecca is building this incredible culture as CEO, and partnering with Rebecca and the board and her team, I can bring some lessons learned. There was a spectacular culture at K2 and frankly, a spectacular culture at Stryker. Stryker had a culture of, Kevin Lobo has done such an incredible job with Stryker overall, and the leaders in that organization about their focus on, how to take commercialized products. So bringing those together, though, there was a lot of lessons learned from me. I'm bringing two cultures together, and then watching C-Spine and Orthofix figure out how to bring those cultures together, and watching Globus and NuVasive figure out how to bring those cultures together. Mm-hmm. And bringing 30 years of experience is watching Acromed and DePuy come together and Stryker and J&J come together. And we've seen so much of this. And I think what was different now about HighRidge is that Rebecca and the spine team, particularly the legacy team, have been dealing with a lot of bolt-ons, culture after culture after culture. And how do you build something in there where you need the resources and the focus? And what I got so excited about coming out of this annual kickoff meeting that we just finished this last weekend, is that, as Rebecca had said, HighRidge is a brand new company. It's the largest startup in medtech. I want you to think about it that way. Mm-hmm. It's the largest startup in medtech that has extremely well funded with HIG, 60 billion under management at HIG. This portfolio that is quite robust, if you look at the portfolio, and now a culture of the largest startup in spine. So there's been so many, people there from the Lynx history and from the EBI history and from the Biomet history and the Zimmer history. And now, bringing in some K2M history. And if you look online, we had Chris O'Connell bringing Medtronic experience. We had Alex Lukianoff talking about the MIS history. We have a lot of different people bringing those lessons learned to say, not only what did we do right, but what did we do? What should we have done differently? How did we learn from this along the way in a new era? Because building K2 today would be completely different. And I don't know if that's possible in what was in 2004 to now 2024. So that's why I think we need to have young, new ideas around the table, maybe some gray hair, 30-year spine experience around the table. And what gets me so excited is that we're so well positioned. There's a lot of disruption in the market right now, Tom. There's a lot of disruption out there. Look at all the companies, a lot of disruption, a lot of questions around what each company is doing. We now are a pure play, spine-only focused company. When you listen to Rebecca talk when she was on the stage and you listen to how the field responded about where she's taking the company and then where the board is supporting her and then the team she's putting around her, I do think it's going to be for the next, you look back and I think each company has its period of its run. And we talked about this. You look back and when Danik had its run with then to Medtronic and when Globus had its run and NuVasive had its run. There was a time for K2 and a time for the C-Spine Orthofix merger and a time with AlphaTech, with Pat doing a great job coming out of COVID. And I look at all of that in the marketplace right now, I'd say this is our time. I'd say this is HighRidge's time. And I don't think it's just lip service. When you think about where we are, the portfolio we have and the funding, that's what got me excited to be here because I do think this new culture is a very, very exciting place to be. So that's how I look at where we are and where we're going.
And Tom, I would just chime in with one additional point.
Please.
This company that we're building, top to bottom, starting with our board, are people who don't just know and understand spine, but love it. We have a shared passion for this industry that I think is unmatched if you look at our competitors. And the theme of our meeting this past weekend was it's go time for all of the reasons Eric just said. We're bringing together a group of people who love this business. We know exactly what to do. We have the right backing now to go do it. And now is our time. So that's why we're so excited about what we're building here is we just see this tremendous potential to turn HighRidge into the next best thing that's happening in spine.
Fantastic. Great stuff. All right. Well, I can feel the excitement and maybe I'll revisit my Wild West inspiration because you're mentioning all that's at play and it really seems like it's reforming and you folks are in a great position to lead the way. So thanks so much for sharing the story today and joining us on the podcast.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
All right, well, that is a wrap. Thanks so much for joining us on this episode of the DeviceTalks weekly podcast. Kayleen Brown and I will see you at MedtechVISION. Again, that's happening on Tuesday, September 10th. Go to MedtechWOMEN.org for more information. Of course, we'll also see you at DeviceTalks West, which is happening the following month, October 16th and 17th at the Santa Clara Convention Center. Lots going on there as well. Go to west.devicetalks.com to register for that. We'll have most of the major OEMs there presenting and telling their stories, as well as some very cool experts in the field who are going to be teaching you how to medtech better. And of course, we're partnered with our Robo Business Conference. So lots of cool technology going on. If you want to save yourself 25%, use the code DT, that stands for Device Talks, DT Pod 25, a DT Pod 25. You'll save 25% off the cost of registration. All right. We'll have no Device Talks Tuesdays this coming week, as I mentioned up top. However, don't forget to tune in for our Connected Health series. We'll have conversations with Donna Medical, Canary Medical, Baxter, and BD. Kayleen Brown and I will be splitting those duties up and look forward to having those great conversations, a great way to learn about advances in the connected health space, how startups and OEMs are looking at the future of this technology. So make sure you register for that. It's free and you can watch it live or on demand. Finally, don't forget to subscribe to the Device Talks Podcast Network. You can find us on any major podcast player. You can also find us on YouTube, which is a major podcast player and is becoming an increasingly big part of Device Talks. So we're all over the place. Make sure you like, follow, and or subscribe so you don't miss a future episode. We just launched our Structural Heart Talks podcast, and we've got our Neuro Innovation Talks podcast being loaded in the chute. So it'll be coming out to you real soon. So thanks to all the companies that are working with us, Edwards Life Sciences, Johnson & Johnson, and many more. And of course, to our many sponsors for supporting our fantastic podcast endeavors. All right, that's it. And don't forget to connect with me on LinkedIn, connect with Kayleen Brown on LinkedIn, Chris Newmarker as well, and connect with Device Talks and Mass Device there also, because we got lots going on, and you're going to want to be up to date. All right, folks, thanks again for tuning in to this episode of the Device Talks Weekly Podcast.